This afternoon, I'm going to talk to you about Taoism. Yang and Yin seem to refer originally to the south and north sides of a mountain. The south side is the sunny side, the north side the shady side. And note that you cannot possibly have a one-sided mountain. Therefore, it's always understood that the Yang and the Yin are the explicit differences of an implicit unity. The poles. Yang is called male, Yin is called female. And another way in which they're represented, aside from these two lines, is in this familiar symbol, in which one tadpole is black and the other white, with the eye of the tadpole the opposite color. So underneath the whole philosophy of China, there lies this recognition, the polarity of the universe. That the opposites go together, or as Lao Tzu puts it, in the second chapter of his book, the Tao Te Ching, when all the world understands beauty to be beautiful, there is already ugliness. When all the world understands goodness to be good, there is already evil. For to be and not to be arise mutually. And this interesting Chinese remark, to be also means to have, not to be, that also means no, nothing, arise mutually. Neither one is before or after the other. They come into being together. This is Yang and this is Yin. So now, when it comes to Taoism, Tao is usually translated the way, but I would prefer to call it the course of nature. So then, what I want to do is to discuss the main ideas of Lao Tzu, and of course, naturally, we have to start with Tao. So you have in the idea of Tao the flow of life, the flow of events, the world considered as a stream. And water is very often used by Lao Tzu to give the idea of Tao, because water always takes the line of least resistance. Water is very soft, and yet one of the strongest things in the world. You can chop water with a sword, but leave no wound. You can't squeeze it. You can't compress it. Wonderful stuff. And elsewhere he says, man at his birth is supple and tender, but in death he is rigid and hard. Thus suppleness and tenderness are the marks of life, and rigidity and hardness the marks of death. Tao is always gentle, you see, always yielding. It is feminine, in a way. Lao Tzu says, although you may be a male, always have a certain feminine quality, and thus you will become a universal channel. So this idea then is the strength of gentleness. And of course it is ultimately on this philosophy that the Japanese worked out the science of judo. Do is the way the Japanese pronounce Tao. Ju means gentle. Judo, the gentle way, whereby a strong man is alarmingly defeated by the use of his own strength against himself. That's judo. So this Tao cannot be defined. That's basic. Just because it is the flow of nature, you can't capture it. You can't shut up wind in a box and expect it to be wind. You can't catch flowing water in a bucket, because the minute it's in the bucket, it's no longer flowing. Now, Tao means roughly what we would mean by the basic energy of the world. But there are two things to be said about it. And the first is that it is not a governing energy. Here we clearly come up against the principle or a concept of nature in which there is no government. This is an anarchic view of the universe. Not in the sense of chaos, but equally not in the sense of what we mean by order. The Tao does not rule. Lao Tzu says, the great Tao flows everywhere, both to the left and to the right. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. And when merits are accomplished, it lays no claim to them. In fact, the Tao is always self-effacing, always disappears, always indefinable, always behind the scenes. And so, in a way, the Lao Tzu's book is written as a manual of advice to rulers. And his idea of a good ruler is one who is never in evidence. It's the difference between rowing and sailing. When you row, it's a relatively stupid method of propulsion because you have to use effort. When you sail, you use the wind. But you don't have to go the way the wind is blowing. You can tack. And tacking so as to go in an opposite direction to the wind is the art of Taoism. Anyone who really understands sailing understands Lao Tzu. So the next thing is that the Tao has a kind of order, but it's not quite what we mean by order. When we speak of order, we usually tend to think of something symmetrical, of something like a library, where all the shelves are rectangular. But the Chinese have a word for order, for the order of the universe, which is this. They pronounce it Li. Now this sign has the original meaning of the markings in jade, or the grain in wood, or the fiber in muscle. So now, when you look at a cloud, or at foam patterns, or at grain patterns in wood, you know for some reason or other that you're not looking at a mess. You're looking at something decidedly wiggly, but aesthetically pleasing. But you can't figure it out. There are no rules which it follows. This word has been translated the principle or rationale of nature, almost the law of nature. But the Chinese have no word for the law of nature. They do have a word for law, the word Ci. And this word Ci, just like your own nervous system, is certainly orderly, but nobody has been able to figure out the principle of it. But we don't really know what that is because we are it. We are organic pattern. And just as we can't bite our own teeth, we cannot define our own organization. We are it, and that's all we need to be. Because the teeth don't need to bite themselves. A saw doesn't need to cut itself. The sun doesn't need to illuminate itself.
Your best self is one choice away. Now's the time to make it real.